Welcome. This channel shares stories inspired by real events, narratives told with respect, memory, and humanity. Because the past has a voice, and we are here to listen.
My goggles melted onto my face. While I was still alive, I was 3,000 meters up, trapped inside a burning aircraft, and a German pilot kept firing at me. There was no way out, or so I thought, because minutes later, I was falling into the sea, and days after that, I fell in love with the daughter of the man who saved me. And it took me 50 years to find my way back to her. If you had only seconds to decide between jumping from a burning plane or dying inside it, what would you do? I made that choice, and it changed absolutely everything, not just because I survived, but because that was the moment the story I could never forget began, not even after half a century. My name is James Thompson, and I was a pilot in the Royal Air Force during the Battle of Britain. Back then they called us the few who stood between England and the end. We were young. Most of us were 20 or less, boys who barely knew how to shave, already having to decide who lived and who died. Churchill once said, "Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few." He was talking about us, about the pilots who woke before sunrise and didn't know if they'd see sunset. But no one tells you what happens after you survive. No one tells you what it's like to carry the faces of those who never came back. And no one tells you how you can find love in the last place it should exist. And no one tells you the price other people pay for your survival. I grew up in the south of England, in Kent. Green fields as far as the eye could see, open skies, and aeroplanes passing over my father's farm nearly every day. I'd stop whatever I was doing just to watch. I'd drop my hoe, forget my lunch, just stand there, mouth open, watching those machines cut through the sky. And beside me, there was always another boy doing the same thing. David Morrison, Dav. We met when I was 7 years old. His family had moved from Scotland to a neighboring farm. He was ginger, freckled, and had an accent so thick it took me months to understand half of what he said. On the first day, he saw me looking up at the sky and asked, "You want to fly too?" And that was it. From that moment on, we were inseparable. We spent our days building wooden airplanes. We'd run through the fields with our arms spread wide, imitating the sound of engines. We'd climb the tallest trees just to get closer to the clouds. One day, Dav would say, we'll be up there for real, together, cutting through the sky. Promise? I'd ask. Promise. It was our dream. The dream of two boys who knew nothing about war, who didn't know that the sky we loved would one day become a battlefield, and that only one of us would come back from it. We grew up together, went to the same school, got told off by the same teachers, fell for the same girls, and lost them to the same boys. But the dream of flying never changed. When I was 15, my father took me to an air show. Dav came along, of course, and that's where we saw a Spitfire for the first time. It passed low, so low we felt the wind. The engine roared like thunder. The wings gleamed in the sun. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. I looked at Dav. He looked at me. We didn't need to say anything. In that moment, we both knew. This was what we wanted to do for the rest of our lives. 3 years later, we did it. We enlisted in the Royal Air Force on the same day. I remember everything. The queue, the forms, the doctor examining us, the officer who looked at us both and said, "Are you sure this isn't a game?" "We're sure," we answered together. When we walked out of that building with our papers in hand, Dav grabbed me by the shoulders and shouted in the middle of the street, "We did it, James! We did it!" We laughed. We jumped. We must have looked like madmen, because in that moment, our childhood dream had become reality. We were going to fly together, just as we'd always promised. My mother cried when I told her, not from sadness, from pride. My father was silent for a long moment. Then he hugged me tight and whispered in my ear, "I know I can't stop you, but promise me you'll come back. Promise me you'll come home." I promise, Father. I didn't know back then that promises are easier to make than to keep. Training began in the winter of 1938. Cold that cut to the bone. Discipline that broke the strongest. Waking before dawn. Sleeping long after dark. But for Dav and me, it was paradise. Because we were finally doing what we'd always dreamed of. Every time I sat in that cockpit, every time the engine roared and the aircraft left the ground, I felt I'd been born for this. Dav felt the same. We shared a room at the barracks, his bed on the left, mine on the right, just like when we were children sleeping over at each other's houses. At night, before sleep, we'd plan the future. "When we graduate," Dav would say, "we'll fly around the whole world, Paris, New York, Tokyo, and Scotland," I'd add. "You promised to show me the mountains and the sheep and the Glasgow girls." In that order. The sheep are prettier. And we'd laugh. We always laughed. Everything was so perfect, so full of hope. But what we didn't know was that war was already knocking at the door, and that in less than a year, that beautiful dream would become the worst nightmare of our lives. Before I went to war, I nearly died in training. It was a spring morning in 1939. Clear sky, calm wind, perfect conditions. I was doing aerobatics exercises, loops, dives, things I'd done dozens of times. But that day, I made a mistake. I pulled up too early, the aircraft shuddered, the controls locked, and suddenly I was in a spin, spinning, falling, the ground rushing up far too fast, 1,000 meters, 800, 600. I was going to die. Before seeing any war, before doing anything that mattered, I was going to die because of a stupid mistake. And in that moment, everything flashed through my mind. My mother, my father, the fields of Kent, and Dav. Dav's face, our dream. I can't die like this. My body acted on its own. I released the controls, let the aircraft fall, and at the last second, I pulled. The Spitfire came out of the spin less than 200 meters from the ground. I saw the trees pass beneath me, so close I could nearly touch them. When I landed, my legs were shaking so badly I could barely climb out. Dav came running, grabbed me by the shoulders. "You idiot! I saw everything. I thought..." He couldn't finish. He just hugged me, and I felt him shaking too. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay staring at the ceiling, thinking about what had almost happened. I had nearly died. For a second, I had nearly ceased to exist. And for the first time, the dream of flying began to taste different. It tasted of fear. I rang home the next day, didn't tell them what happened. I just wanted to hear my father's voice. He answered, asked if everything was all right. "Everything's fine," I lied. We sat in silence for a moment. Then he said, "James, I never asked you not to go, because I know you need to do this, but I need you to promise me something." "What?" "When you're up there and everything's going wrong, don't be a hero. Heroes die. Survivors come home." I promised, and I didn't keep it, because when the time came, I wasn't a hero. But I didn't come home either. I got stuck in between life and death, between who I was and who the war turned me into. The 1st of September, 1939, Germany invaded Poland. 2 days later, Britain declared war. I remember exactly where I was, common room at the barracks, radio on in the corner, all the pilots gathered around silent. When the announcer made the declaration, no one said a word. We just stood there, staring at the radio, trying to understand what it meant. Dad was beside me. I felt him tense up. "Now it's real," he whispered. That night, we stayed up late. "Are you afraid?" I asked. He took a while to answer. "I'm afraid of not being afraid," he said. "I'm afraid I might enjoy it." I didn't understand that night. I understood later, when I shot down my first plane and felt something I shouldn't have felt. The months that followed were strange. War had been declared, but it seemed far away. It was happening somewhere else. Poland, Norway, countries I only knew from maps. In England, life went on almost normally. People went to work. Children went to school. The pubs filled up at weekends, but everyone knew it was only a matter of time. And in May 1940, time ran out. Germany attacked France. Blitzkrieg, lightning war, tanks crashing through borders like water breaking through a dam, aircraft darkening the sky, entire cities destroyed in days. France, mighty France, fell in 6 weeks. And suddenly, the war wasn't far away anymore. It was right there, across the channel, just hours away. The English cities began to change. Sandbags in the windows, air raid shelters in the parks, children being evacuated to the countryside. At night, total blackout. No light could show, because any light was a target for German bombers. Fear took over everything. Churchill spoke on the radio. I listened with Dav and the whole squadron in absolute silence. "We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall never surrender." And I thought, this is it. There's no one else. It's us or them. Germany was planning to invade Britain, Operation Sea Lion. But first, they had to destroy the Royal Air Force. If they could dominate the skies, they'd invade by land and sea, and the war would be lost. Everything depended on us, the pilots, the few. We were around 3,000 men against the largest air force in the world, against thousands of German aircraft, against Hitler's war machine. And what I didn't know yet was that in the weeks to come, 2/3 of us would die or be wounded, and I would watch my best friend become one of them. July 1940, the Battle of Britain began. At first, the Luftwaffe attacked ships in the Channel, testing our defenses, measuring our strength. Then came the RAF bases, the radar stations, the factories. They wanted to destroy us on the ground before we could get into the air. And we flew every day, sometimes 2, 3, 4 times a day. Take off, climb, find the enemy, fight, return, eat something, sleep a few hours, and do it all again. The exhaustion was brutal. I'd sleep sitting up, sleep standing, sleep in the 30 seconds between one alert and the next. But when the alarm sounded, the body woke on its own, because you knew if you don't wake up, you die. My first victory came in August. I was over the channel escorting bombers returning from a mission. Blue sky, scattered clouds, bright sun, and suddenly, bandits at 2 o'clock. The world turned to chaos. Aircraft crossing in every direction. Machine gun bursts tearing through the air. Smoke, screams on the radio. I turned after a Messerschmitt chasing one of ours. Closed in, aimed, fired. The bullets hit his wing, then his engine. Black smoke. The aircraft rolled, fell into a spiral, disappeared into the clouds. I had shot down an enemy aircraft. When I landed, the others congratulated me, slapped my back. Dav gave me a bear hug. "First of many, James. First of many." I smiled, accepted the congratulations, drank the beer they offered, and then I felt something strange. It wasn't guilt. It was satisfaction. And that frightened me more than the combat. I had killed a man, and I had liked it. That night, I remembered what Dav had said months before. "I'm afraid I might enjoy it." Now I understood, and it was then, in that dark night, that I began to wonder, who am I becoming? The battle continued, the missions increased, and we began losing people. Williams fell on the first day of August, Peterson on the third. Young Clark, who had just arrived, who hadn't yet turned 20, lasted a week. One by one, the familiar faces disappeared, and new faces arrived to fill the empty beds. We didn't talk much about the dead. There wasn't time. There wasn't energy. But at night, when there was a minute before sleep, I'd look at the empty beds and count how many were left. One night, Dav called me outside. We sat behind the hangar, cigarettes in hand, full moon in the sky. "James," he said, "if I don't come back from a mission—" "Shut up, Dav. No, listen, if I don't come back, I want you to go to Scotland. Visit my mum. Tell her I died well, that I didn't suffer, that I died doing what I loved." I turned to look at him, my best friend since we were 7. The boy who dreamed of flying with me, who joined the RAF with me, who'd been by my side since day one. "You'll come back," I said. "We both will. We promised, remember? We still have to see the Scottish mountains, and the sheep, and the girls." He smiled, but it was a sad smile. "Yeah, James, the sheep." We sat in silence looking at the sky, the same sky we'd loved as children, now filled with death. And I didn't know in that moment that in less than a week, I'd have to keep that promise. The 15th of September, 1940, the day they would later call Battle of Britain Day, the Luftwaffe sent everything they had. Hundreds of bombers, Heinkel, Dornier, Junkers, hundreds of Messerschmitt fighters escorting them. The sky turned dark with German aircraft. The alert sounded before dawn. All pilots, all pilots. We ran to our aircraft, took off in minutes, 8 Spitfires. Dav flew on my wing. As always, we climbed 1,000 meters, 2,000, 3,000, and there they were, a wall of aircraft from horizon to horizon, bombers in formation, fighters above, below, on every side. So many it seemed impossible. "My God," someone whispered on the radio. For a second, I felt real fear, not the combat fear that adrenaline erases, fear of looking at death and knowing it's looking back. But there was no time for fear. The squadron leader gave the order, "Attack!" and we dived. What happened next is hard to describe. Chaos. Pure chaos, aircraft crossing in every direction, explosions, smoke, white parachutes drifting down. I fired, dodged, turned, fired again. I wasn't thinking. The body acted on its own, training becoming instinct. I shot down 2, maybe 3. I lost count. And then I saw Dav's Spitfire. He was trailing smoke from his engine, a Messerschmitt on his tail, firing without pause. "Dav, get out of there! Dav!" I turned to help, pushed the stick with all my strength. The engine screamed, but I was too far. I saw the bullets hit the cockpit. 1, 2, 3. I saw Dav's aircraft roll, slowly, as if in slow motion. I saw the explosion, an orange fireball in the blue sky. There was no parachute. I don't know how I got back to base. I don't remember the flight home, don't remember landing. I only remember standing on the runway, looking at the sky, waiting for him to appear, for it to be a mistake, for him to have jumped, to be somewhere. But he didn't appear. Half the squadron didn't return that day, but I could only think of one, David Morrison, Dav, my best friend since we were 7. The boy who dreamed of flying with me, who promised we'd see the world together, dead, burned, at 22 years old. That night, I sat on his bed. His things were still there, books, photos, a half-finished letter to his mom. I picked up the letter. He was in the middle of a sentence. "Mom, when the war is over, me and James are going to..." He didn't finish. He never would. I didn't cry. I wanted to cry. I needed to cry. But I couldn't. I was too empty, too broken. I promised myself I'd keep his request. When the war was over, I'd visit his mum in Scotland. I'd tell her he died well, that he didn't suffer. It was a lie. He died in flames, alone, 3,000 meters up. But some lies are necessary. And in that moment, looking at my best friend's empty bed, I knew something. The boy who dreamed of flying had died with Dav. What was left was someone else. And 5 days later, it would be my turn to fall. It was a mission, like so many others. Intercept German bombers over the English Channel, stop them reaching London. We took off at dawn. 8 Spitfires. I was quieter than usual, still carrying the weight of Dav's death like a stone in my chest. Every time I looked to the side, I expected to see him on my wing and saw only empty sky. We climbed, found the bombers, attacked. The fight began like all the others. I was chasing a Heinkel when I felt the impact. I didn't hear the Messerschmitt coming, didn't see it, I just felt it. Burst in the right wing, then another in the engine. Alarms blaring, red lights flashing, and then fire. The flames started in the engine and spread fast, too fast. Smoke filled the cockpit. I couldn't see, couldn't breathe. The heat was unbearable. I felt my skin burning through my uniform, my goggles melting against my face, the rubber fusing with my skin. The pain was, I have no words. It was as if my face were being torn off. "Thompson, bail out! Bail out!" The voice on the radio seemed to come from another world, but my hands moved on instinct, training taking over when the mind can no longer think. Open the canopy. Violent wind, fire roaring, release the harness. Body being pulled in every direction, jump, free fall. For a moment, a second, an eternity, I saw everything. My Spitfire above in flames, spiraling down. The blue sky, the white clouds, the gray sea below. And I thought of Dav. I thought, was it like this for him? Did he see this too? Then the parachute opened, brutal jolt, shoulders nearly dislocating, and then silence, just the wind, just me descending slowly, swaying beneath the white canopy. I looked down. sea. Only gray sea as far as the eye could see. I was going to land in the English Channel. Between England and France, freezing water, waves, miles of nothing. I'm going to die, I thought, like Dav. I'm going to die and no one will know. The impact was brutal. Freezing water swallowed me. The cold cut to the bone. The parachute fell over me, trapping me, pulling me down. I fought, arms and legs thrashing, lungs burning, the cords wrapped around my legs. The equipment dragged me deeper. I can't. But some part of me, the part that refused to die, kept fighting. Cut the cords, kicked off my boots, swam upward, surface, air. I breathed. The waves threw me side to side. Salt water filling my mouth, my nose, my burned face stinging in the salt. I was exhausted, burned, frozen, and completely alone. How long did I swim? I don't know. Minutes felt like hours. My arms grew heavy. My legs stopped responding. I'm going to die here, I thought, in the middle of nowhere. Without saying goodbye to anyone, I was beginning to sink. When I saw the boat, it was a small boat, a fishing vessel, dark wood, patched sail, net hanging over the side. For a moment, I thought I was hallucinating, a mirage, my mind playing tricks before death. But the boat came closer, and I saw a man at the bow. "Here!" I tried to shout, but my voice came out as a hoarse whisper. It didn't matter. He saw me. The boat drew near. Strong hands grabbed me, pulled me up. I collapsed onto the wet deck, coughing, shaking, barely able to keep my eyes open. A voice. French. I didn't understand the words, but I understood the tone, urgency, concern. "Anglais?" he asked. "English?" "Yes," I managed. "RF. Pilot." The man looked around, at the sea, at the sky. Then he crouched down and whispered, "Shut, silence, Allemands." Germans, even exhausted, even half-conscious. I understood. We were near the French coast, occupied. Germans everywhere. This man, this fisherman I didn't even know, was risking his own life to save me. In occupied France, hiding an enemy soldier was a death sentence. Not just for him, for the entire family. He knew that. And yet, he saved me. His name was Pierre Dufresne. I learned that later. In that moment, I knew nothing. Only that he covered me with an old tarp, hid me beneath fishing nets, and rowed silently toward shore. Pierre Dufresne had been a fisherman for 30 years. He knew that sea like the back of his hand, knew where the Germans patrolled, knew the schedules, the routes. He wasn't in the resistance. He wasn't a soldier, wasn't a spy. He was just a simple man who saw another man dying and decided he wouldn't let it happen. How many people would have that courage? How many would risk everything, their life, their family, everything, for a stranger? I drifted in and out of consciousness, fragments of images, waves, gray sky, Pierre's bearded face looking down at me with concern, then land, beach, arms carrying me, and darkness. I woke in a cellar, dark, damp, smell of salt and old wood, a candle flickering in the corner. I tried to sit up. Pain exploded through my entire body. I groaned, and then I heard a voice, female, soft, worried. No, ne bougez pas, don't move. I turned my head, and I saw Marie for the first time, and in that moment, without knowing it, my life changed forever. She was sitting on a stool beside me. The first thing I saw were her eyes, brown, large, deep, eyes that seemed to carry an ancient sadness but still held light. Then I saw the rest. Dark hair tied back with a simple scarf, delicate face, small hands holding bandages. She was beautiful, but it wasn't just beauty. It was something more, something I felt in my chest before I understood it in my head. "You hurt," she said in hesitant English. "I help." Her voice was soft. Even with the accent, even with the wrong words, it was the most beautiful voice I'd ever heard. I wanted to answer, but my throat was too dry. She noticed, picked up a glass of water, brought it to my lips. I drank slowly. The water went down cold, soothing. "Thank you," I managed to say. She smiled, and that smile I will never forget. It was like watching the sun rise after a storm. "Marie," she said, pointing to herself. "Je m'appelle Marie." "James," I replied. "James Thompson." She repeated my name. James. With a French accent, it sounded different, softer, more beautiful. And in that moment, there, in that dark cellar, with my body burned and the war raging outside, I felt something I shouldn't have felt, something that made no sense. Peace. In the days that followed, Marie cared for me, changed the bandages on my burns, brought food, what little there was, because the war left nothing to spare, sat beside me when I couldn't sleep. At first, we could barely understand each other. She spoke French, I spoke English. The words crossed and got lost. But the strange thing is, it didn't matter, because we understood each other in another way, through looks, through gestures, through shared silence. One night, I woke up screaming, nightmare, Dav in flames, the Spitfire falling, freezing water swallowing me. Marie came running down, found me sitting in the corner, trembling in a cold sweat. She didn't say anything. She just sat beside me, took my hand, and stayed there. I don't know how long we stayed like that. Her holding my hand in the dark. Her presence calming me more than any words could. And when my breathing finally steadied, she said softly, "Je suis là. I'm here." 3 words. 3 words that meant everything. I was in love. I knew it was madness, that it made no sense. I was an English pilot. She was French. There was a war raging outside, Germans on every corner. I didn't even know if I'd survive until the next day. But the heart doesn't care about logic. The heart only knows how to feel. And mine had chosen Marie. The weeks that followed were the strangest and most beautiful of my life. I was still hidden in that cellar, still a fugitive, still with Germans patrolling outside. Every footstep in the street could mean death. But within those stone walls, the world outside ceased to exist. Marie came down every day, in the morning, in the afternoon, at night, always with some excuse, bringing food, changing bandages, checking if I needed anything. But we both knew the truth. She came down because she wanted to see me, and I waited all day for that moment. We'd talk for hours about everything, about nothing, about our lives before the war, about our dreams, about the fears we didn't tell anyone else. She told me about her mother, who had died when Marie was 12, about her father, who had raised her alone, about life in the village, which was simple but happy, until the Germans came. I told her about Kent, about my parents, about the green fields and the open sky, and I told her about Dav. When I spoke about him, my voice broke. Marie took my hand, said nothing, just stayed there holding while I cried for the first time since he died. With her, I could be weak, I could be afraid, I could cry. I didn't have to pretend to be strong. One night, the Germans came too close. German voices in the street, heavy boots on the cobblestones. Marie had just come down when we heard them. She blew out the candle, quick, silent, total darkness. I pulled her close to me, against the wall, away from the stairs. She didn't resist. We stayed like that, motionless, barely breathing, listening to the German voices pass, laughter, orders, boots moving away, silence. But I didn't let go of Marie, and she didn't pull away. In the absolute darkness, I could only feel the warmth of her body against mine, her quickening breath, a heart beating. I didn't know if it was mine or hers. "James," she whispered, "I'm here." I know. Her hand found my face in the dark, fingers tracing my jaw, my cheek, the scar from the burns. And then her lips found mine. The first kiss was soft, hesitant, tasting of fear and courage mixed together, tasting of war and peace at the same time. When we parted, I said, "When the war is over, I'll come back. I'll come back for you. We'll have a life together, far away from all this." "Promise?" she asked. "I promise." She rested her forehead against mine. "I believe you, James Thompson." And she kissed me again. I can't explain what that love was. It wasn't like the romances my mother read. It wasn't strolls through gardens and elegant dinners. It was a damp cellar. It was constant fear. It was whispers in the dark and muffled laughter. It was sharing the little we had. It was knowing that every moment could be the last. Perhaps that's why it was so intense. When you don't know if there will be a tomorrow, today becomes too precious. We made plans. When the war was over, I'd come back. I'd marry her. I'd take her to see Kent, my parents, the green fields, the open sky. And then, I said one night, "We'll go to Scotland, see the mountains, the sheep." She laughed. "Sheep? My best friend promised to take me. Now I'll take you instead." She looked into my eyes. "Serious? He was important to you." "He was. He is." "Then we'll go, for the sheep and for him." And I loved her even more in that moment. But what I didn't know was that tomorrow would come too soon and would separate us for 50 years. The news came on an October morning. Pierre had made contact with the resistance. There was a plan. A boat would cross the channel at night, carrying supplies to England. They could take me with them. It was my chance to return, to fight again, to make a difference. But it also meant leaving Marie. I had 1 week, and that was when I faced the hardest decision of my life. Because I knew something no one had told me directly, but I had noticed. The Germans were suspicious. A neighbor, a woman who had lost her husband in the war, had started asking questions. Why did the Dufresne have visitors so late? Why did Marie go down to the cellar so often? Why did Pierre go fishing at strange hours? If I stayed, the risk increased every day. If I left, perhaps I'd draw attention away. But there was another possibility. If I left, and the Germans found out after that I had been there, Pierre would be arrested, tortured, executed. Marie, too. I spoke to Pierre about it. He looked at me with those hard fisherman's eyes, eyes that had seen too many storms. "You need to go," he said. "But what about you? If they find out, we'll look after ourselves." "Pierre, the neighbor is suspicious. I've seen how she looks at the house. If the Germans question her." He was silent for a moment. Then he said, "I know the risk. I've always known. From the moment I pulled you from that water." "Why?" I asked. "Why did you risk everything for a stranger?" He looked at the wall, at an old photograph of a woman. "My wife died 7 years ago. Illness. There was nothing I could do to Save her. He turned to me. When I saw you in that water, I could do something. I could save someone. I wasn't going to let you die when I could prevent it. I sat in silence. What do you say to a man like that? Go, he said. Go back to your war, and when it's over, come back for my daughter. She deserves to be happy. I'll come back, I said. I promise. He nodded. I know you will. On the last night, Marie came down with something in her hands. A handkerchief, delicate, white with lace. Edges. It smelled of her. It was my mother's, she said. It's the most precious thing I have. Marie, I can't accept this. You can, and you will. She placed the handkerchief in my hands. So you'll remember me, so you'll have a piece of me until you return. I looked at the handkerchief, then at her. I don't need a handkerchief to remember you, Marie. You're engraved here. I put my hand on my heart. Forever. She smiled. That smile I loved. Then keep it anyway, to keep me company when I can't be there. And I should have told her the truth in that moment. Should have told her about the suspicious neighbor. Should have warned her of the danger, but I didn't. Because I wanted to leave. I wanted to return to England. I wanted to survive, and I chose my survival over her safety. That's the truth I've carried for 50 years, that I knew the risk, and I left anyway. The farewell was on the beach, midnight, moon hidden behind clouds, rough sea. The resistance boat waited offshore, a dark shadow on the waves. Pierre took me to the sand, shook my hand. Take care of her, I said. Please. I always have. I always will. He stepped away, left me alone with Marie. We stood in silence for a moment, the wind in her hair, the waves breaking at our feet. I looked at her, tried to memorize every detail, the brown eyes, the sad smile, the small hands holding mine. I'll come back, I said. When the war is over, I'll come back. No matter how long it takes, no matter what happens, I'll come back. Je t'attendrai, she said. I will wait. 1 year, 10 years, a lifetime if I must. You won't need to. The war will be over soon, and I'll be here, right here on this beach, waiting for you like you waited for me. She touched my face. Her fingers were trembling. I love you, James Thompson. It was the first time she'd said it, in any language. Je t'aime aussi, I replied. I love you too. My French was terrible, but in that moment, it was perfect. We kissed. A long kiss. Desperate, full of everything we couldn't say, of promises, of fears, of love. When we parted, I took something from my pocket. The burned goggles, the same ones that had melted onto my face. Pierre saved these, I said. Found them in the sea with me. I want you to keep them. James, so you'll remember me? So you'll know I'm real, that this was real. She took the goggles, looked at them. They hurt you, and they brought me to you. She kept the goggles along with her mother's handkerchief, my pieces with hers. Go, she said, before I won't let you. I stepped away, slowly, without taking my eyes off her, walked to the dinghy that would take me to the boat, looked back one last time. Marie stood on the beach, small, alone, the wind in her hair, her silhouette against the dark sky. She raised her hand. A wave. I waved back, and the dinghy carried me into the darkness. I looked back until I couldn't see anymore, until the beach became just a dark line, until Marie disappeared completely. Her handkerchief was in my pocket against my chest, her scent still on it. I didn't know in that moment, couldn't have known, that 2 weeks after I left, the Germans would come to the Dufresne house, that the neighbor had informed on them, that Pierre would be arrested, tortured, that Marie would be interrogated, and that by some miracle they would survive. But Pierre would never be the same. And Marie would carry those scars for the rest of her life because of me. But that night, in the dinghy, I knew none of this. I only knew I was leaving my heart on that beach, and that it would be 50 years, 50 long years, before I'd see her again. I reached England. 2 days later, I was received as a hero, the pilot who fell into the sea and came back, the survivor. They gave me medals. They gave me speeches. They treated me as if I'd done something extraordinary. But I didn't feel like a hero. I felt split in two, half of me in England, half somewhere on the French coast with a brown-eyed girl, and deep in my chest, a weight, a feeling that something was wrong, that I had left something unfinished, someone in danger. I tried to fly again. I couldn't. The first time I sat in a Spitfire cockpit, everything came back. The fire, the smoke, the heat, the goggles melting, Dav's face disappearing into flames. My heart raced. My hand shook. I couldn't breathe. I had to get out. Nearly fell. Combat fatigue, they said. Today, they'd call it something else. But in the 40s, it was just shame. I became an instructor, spent the rest of the war teaching other pilots, sending them into the sky, while I stayed on the ground, safe, alive, useless. The war ended in May 1945, and I went to find Marie. But France was in chaos. Cities destroyed, records lost, millions of people displaced. I searched for weeks, months, asked in every village, gave the name, Dufresne, Pierre, Marie. No one knew or didn't want to say. I couldn't find her. And gradually, the hope died. She must have died in the war, I thought, or married. Moved on. Forgot the English pilot who promised to return and never did. I returned to England, got on with life, married Helen, a good woman, a teacher, a gentle smile. We had children, grandchildren, a good life. But always, Marie was there, at the back of my mind, in my dreams, in the handkerchief I kept hidden in a drawer. Helen never knew. What would I say? Before you, I loved another woman, and part of me still loves her. That wouldn't be fair, so I kept it secret, kept it for 50 years, and I didn't know. Had no idea what had happened to Marie and Pierre after I left. Didn't know that 2 weeks after I left, the Germans knocked on their door, that the neighbor had reported suspicious activity, that Pierre was arrested and taken to the German headquarters, that they interrogated him for days, that they beat him, broke his fingers, used methods I cannot describe. They wanted to know who was he hiding, where did he take them, and Pierre didn't say a word, didn't give up a single name, a single place, endured it all in silence. Marie was interrogated too, a 19-year-old girl in a room full of German soldiers. They shouted at her, threatened her, hit her, and she said nothing either. After weeks, the Germans gave up. No evidence, no confession. They released them both. But Pierre never recovered. His body broken, his spirit destroyed. He died months later. His heart couldn't take it. And Marie was left alone, 19 years old, father dead, mother gone for years, alone in an occupied country. And still, she waited for the English pilot who promised to return. Years, decades, a lifetime. And I knew nothing of this, didn't know the price they paid for saving me, didn't know that my leaving, my choice, nearly cost them their lives. I only found out 50 years later. And when I did, the weight nearly crushed me. 1993. 53 years after the war. I was an old man, white hair, stooped back, trembling hands. Helen had died 6 years before. The children had their own lives. I lived alone in a house that was too big. The BBC was making a documentary, 50th anniversary of the Battle of Britain. They wanted to interview veterans. A producer found me, asked if I'd be willing to talk. I said yes. Why not? The stories deserve to be told. The interview was in my living room. Cameras, lights, a young journalist with prepared questions. I talked about the training, the battles, Dav, the day I was shot down. And then the journalist asked, "You said you were rescued by a French fisherman. Do you know what happened to him?" I paused. I wasn't expecting that question. "Dufresne," I said. "Pierre Dufresne, north coast of France near the Channel." I paused. I was never able to find him after the war, never able to thank him. He saved my life, and I don't even know if he survived. The journalist took notes. We moved on to other subjects. I didn't think about it again. The documentary was broadcast 3 months later. I watched it alone. A cup of tea. Too many memories. I saw my face on the screen, heard my voice telling stories from 50 years ago. Then I turned off the television and went to bed. 2 weeks later, the telephone rang. A woman, voice with an accent. British Veterans Organization. "Mr. Thompson, we have a contact from France, a woman who saw the documentary. She says she recognized you, says her father was Pierre Dufresne." My heart stopped. "Her name," I managed to say. "What's her name?" Marie Dufresne." Silence. The world stopped turning. 50 years thinking she was dead, that she'd forgotten me, that she'd moved on. And she was alive, had seen the documentary, had recognized me after half a century. "She left a number," the woman said. "Would you like me to give it to you?" "Yes, please, yes." I put down the phone, looked at the paper with Marie's number, hands trembling more than ever. I dialed. It rang once, twice, and then, "Hello?" The voice was older, rougher, but I recognized it. I would recognize it anywhere, at any time. "Marie?" Silence on the other end. Then a sound, a sob. "James, c'est toi? Is it you?" "It's me, Marie, it's me." And we cried, together, separated by an ocean, but together, 50 years, and she still remembered my voice. 3 months later, I was on a plane to Paris, the first time I'd flown since the war. Palms sweating, heart racing, but not from fear, from anticipation. Charles de Gaulle Airport, arrivals, long corridor, passport, baggage, and then the arrivals hall. People everywhere, families reuniting, noise, movement, and in the middle of it all, a woman standing still, white hair, lined face, hands clasped in front of her. Our eyes met. 50 years had passed. We were different people. Hair that was once brown was now white. Skin that was once smooth now had wrinkles. Bodies that were once young were now tired. But the eyes were the same. Those brown eyes I first saw in a dark cellar, that looked at me with love while the war raged outside, that cried when I left. They were the same eyes, and they were looking at me. We walked toward each other, slowly at first, then faster, and then we were in each other's arms. 50 years of longing, in a single embrace. I don't know how long we stayed like that, holding, crying, without words, because there are no words for a moment like that. We spent a week together, visited the village, the house, the cellar where we fell in love, visited the beach where we said goodbye, walked on the sand hand in hand in silence, and then she told me everything. The informer, Pierre's arrest, the interrogation, the threats, the blows, the fear, her father's death months later, the years alone, the war, the rebuilding, the life she built, always waiting. I listened in silence. Every word was a knife in my chest. When she finished, I said, "Marie, I knew. Before I left, I knew the neighbor was suspicious. I knew the risk, and yet I left. I chose my life over your safety." She looked at me for a long moment. "I know," she said. "You know?" "My father told me. Before he died, he said you had warned him that you wanted to stay, but that he sent you away. It wasn't enough. I should have insisted. I should have—" "James," she took my hands, "it wasn't your fault. The war wasn't your fault. The neighbor wasn't your fault. My father made a choice. I made a choice. You did what you had to do. But the price was high, but it was our choice to pay it, not yours." She touched my face. The same fingers, 50 years older. "What matters is that you came back. 50 years late, but you came back, as you promised." And in that moment, something released inside me. 50 years of guilt, of questions, of sleepless nights. Gone. We didn't live together after that. Our lives were already built. Children, grandchildren, countries. But we visited each other, spoke every week, traveled together. We went to Scotland, saw the mountains, the sheep, raised a toast to Dav. And last year, I donated my burned goggles to the RAF Museum. Marie was there, holding my hand. "These goggles," I told the gathering, "witnessed fire, sea, France, love, war, longing. They witnessed the price innocent people paid for a pilot who fell from the sky. And they witnessed, 50 years later, forgiveness. The Battle of Britain saved England, but Pierre and Marie saved me, and they paid for it. I wasn't the hero of this story. The heroes were them, the fisherman who risked everything for a stranger, the daughter who loved in the midst of chaos, and who waited 50 years for a promise I thought I'd never be able to keep. But I kept it. Je suis revenu, Marie. I came back, as I promised." And she smiled. That smile. "Je sais, James, I know," and I waited. Sometimes 50 years is just a moment when you truly love, and sometimes the person you love pays the price for that love. The least you can do is come back. And that's what I did. 50 years late, but I came back. And if you're wondering, yes, she kept the goggles. Sometimes 50 years is just a moment.
Although this story is told as a personal account, it takes place during a real moment in history. The Battle of Britain in 1940 was one of the most decisive air conflicts of the Second World War. Pilots of the Royal Air Force faced the German Air Force in intense combat, often outnumbered. They became known as the Few, the ones who stood between England and invasion. And just like in today's story, many never came back. And those who did carried these memories for the rest of their lives. This was today's story, a story about choices, about survival, and about the price other people sometimes pay for them. Now I want to ask you something. If you were in his place, knowing your decision could put others in danger, would you have stayed, or would you have left to survive? And now that you know how it all ends, would you still make the same choice? Tell us in the comments. And also, let me know where you're listening from. It's incredible to think that stories like this, cross countries, cross languages, and still find someone on the other side of the world. If this story stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want to keep listening to stories like this, subscribe to the channel, because as long as someone is listening, these stories will never die. See you in the next story.